Hello. I'm Dr. John, and this is the channel where health and education meet. Have you ever felt that, the more you try to change your habits, the harder it seems? As if something is pulling you back, leaving you without energy, motivation, and stuck in a cycle that only worsens over time? If you struggle with weight and also experience symptoms like anxiety, constant sadness, or lack of energy, this video may help you understand why this happens and, more importantly, how to break free from this trap. Today, I'll show you the direct connection between obesity and depression and how one problem fuels the other without you realizing it. We'll talk about what's happening in your brain, why your body seems to fight against you, and, most importantly, what simple steps you can start taking now to break this cycle and regain your energy, mood, and self-esteem. If you feel like you've tried everything and nothing works, stick with me until the end, because I'll show you strategies that truly make a difference. Small adjustments can completely change the way you feel day to day. And believe me, there is a way out, and it can start now. Many people don't realize, but obesity and depression go hand in hand, forming a cycle that's hard to break. When someone gains weight, it's not just the body that feels it, the mind suffers too. Self-esteem drops, energy vanishes, and often, guilt creeps in, making everything feel even heavier. The problem is that, to relieve this feeling, many people turn to food for comfort, especially sweets and ultra-processed foods, which offer momentary pleasure but come at a high price later. And so, the cycle continues. The brain responds to excess weight and poor eating as if it's under attack. Stress levels rise, sleep worsens, and metabolism slows down, making it even harder to find motivation to move. That's why the "I'll start on Monday" promise rarely happens because, biologically, the body and mind are already programmed to resist change. This doesn't mean there's no way out, but rather that you need to first understand what's going on in order to act the right way. If it were just a matter of willpower, everything would be easier. But when obesity directly impacts hormones and brain chemistry, it's as if the body is working against you. Feelings of tiredness and frustration accumulate, and discouragement becomes the rule, not the exception. But what if it were possible to reverse this? What if there were ways to trick the brain and take back control, without needing drastic changes or impossible diets? The brain doesn't just feel the effects of obesity, it amplifies them. When someone gains weight uncontrollably, their nervous system interprets it as a warning signal. The body starts releasing more cortisol, the stress hormone, which not only worsens mood but also encourages fat storage, particularly around the abdomen. Furthermore, the excess sugar and ultra-processed foods alter dopamine production, the pleasure neurotransmitter, creating a vicious cycle. The more you eat, the more you want to eat, but the less pleasure you get from it. Another dangerous effect is brain inflammation, which directly affects functions like memory, concentration, and emotional regulation. Studies show that people with obesity have higher levels of inflammation in the brain, which can lead to symptoms like irritability, lack of motivation, and even cognitive difficulties. That's why people who are overweight often feel a mental fog, an inexplicable difficulty in making decisions or staying focused on simple tasks. This fog isn't laziness or lack of discipline, it's biology in action. Moreover, obesity reduces sensitivity to leptin, the hormone that tells the brain the body has enough energy. When this happens, the feeling of hunger never seems to go away, and fatigue becomes constant. As a result, the person eats more than they need but still feels like something's missing. But is there a way to interrupt this process and regain mental clarity and lost energy? Yes, and it all starts with how we shape our daily habits. Habits are like gears that keep the obesity and depression cycle turning. The problem is that, often, they form in ways that are almost imperceptible. A person starts by sleeping poorly for a few days, then feels more tired and compensates by eating something quick and calorie-dense. Energy drops, sedentarism increases, and before they realize it, they're trapped in a routine that drains their energy and reinforces discouragement. The brain, for its part, loves patterns, so it adapts to this new reality and makes it harder and harder to break it. And it's not just eating habits that are part of this cycle. Lack of physical activity, excessive screen time before bed, lack of sunlight exposure, and even how we deal with stress all contribute to deepening this abyss. Imagine a person who spends the whole day sitting, sleeps poorly at night, and wakes up exhausted the next day. As a result, they turn to excess coffee and processed foods to try to feel better. The effect? A body that's increasingly resistant to change and a mind that's more and more fragile. But there's an important detail: just as bad habits trap us, good habits can set us free. Small daily changes, like walking for 10 minutes after meals, swapping soda for sparkling water, or creating a consistent sleep routine, have a huge impact over time. The secret is to replace harmful patterns with choices that work in favor of the body and mind. And speaking of impact, it's impossible to ignore how lack of energy and motivation further aggravate this cycle. Lack of energy isn't just a consequence of obesity, it becomes a trigger for depression. When the body is overloaded with excess weight and a poor diet, serotonin and dopamine production, neurotransmitters responsible for well-being, plummets. The result? Fatigue that doesn't go away even after a good night's sleep, and a lack of motivation that makes even the simplest tasks a real challenge. And the less energy the person has, the less motivation they feel to change their situation, creating a cycle that's hard to break. Moreover, lack of motivation doesn't happen by chance. The brain is constantly seeking quick rewards, and when they don't come from healthy sources like exercise or good nights of sleep, it looks for shortcuts, such as ultra-processed foods and hours of passive entertainment on the phone. The problem is that these strategies only make things worse, further feeding the feeling of exhaustion. Over time, the person begins to believe they don't have the strength to change, reinforcing a negative thought that keeps them stagnant. But there is a way out. Small daily adjustments, such as starting the day with 5 minutes of sunlight exposure or swapping heavy foods for meals rich in protein and fiber, help restore energy and reignite motivation. The secret is to take the first step, no matter how small. And speaking of balance, one of the most decisive factors in this equation is hormones, and their impact on mental health can be even greater than you imagine. Hormones are like conductors orchestrating the balance of the body and mind, and when they are out of sync, everything falls out of rhythm. Obesity directly affects the production of serotonin, dopamine, and cortisol, creating a chemical environment perfect for depression and anxiety to settle in. Excess body fat generates inflammation, which interferes with the production of these neurotransmitters, leaving the person more irritable, without energy, and emotionally unstable. That's why, often, people who are overweight feel they fluctuate between moments of extreme demotivation and brief bursts of energy that quickly fade. Another crucial hormone in this process is insulin. When the diet is based on sugars and refined carbohydrates, insulin spikes, and over time, the body becomes resistant to it. This means the energy from food is not used properly, generating a cycle of constant hunger and extreme fatigue. To make matters worse, leptin, the hormone responsible for signaling satiety, also loses its efficiency, causing the person to eat more than necessary without even realizing it. The result? An overloaded brain, an exhausted body, and an increasingly smaller will to break this cycle, but the good news is that hormonal balance can be restored with simple habits. Reducing sugar intake, prioritizing healthy proteins and fats, and investing in quality sleep are strategies that make a huge difference. Small adjustments, such as swapping white bread for eggs at breakfast or avoiding screens before bed, are enough to start regulating these hormones. And when hormones are back in balance, the mind responds with more clarity, energy, and disposition. Now, the big question is, how to break this vicious cycle in practice. Breaking the cycle of obesity and depression doesn't require drastic changes overnight. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Small adjustments, made consistently, have a much bigger impact than extreme attempts that don't last long. One of the first steps is adjusting your diet by swapping ultra-processed foods for natural and nutritious options. A good example is replacing bread and sweetened coffee with eggs and avocado at breakfast, which stabilizes insulin and improves energy throughout the day. In addition, drinking more water and ensuring good sources of protein help reduce hunger spikes and improve mood. The second pillar is movement. You don't need to become an athlete overnight, but adding small doses of physical activity into daily life already makes a huge difference. Walking 10 minutes after meals, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or even stretching in the morning are simple habits that reprogram the brain to seek more movement. Furthermore, physical exercise increases the production of endorphins and serotonin, reducing depression symptoms and boosting the sense of well-being. And last but not least, there's sleep. Sleeping well is one of the most powerful factors for regulating hormones, controlling appetite, and improving mood. Creating a nightly routine, avoiding screens before bed, and reducing caffeine intake in the afternoon already makes a huge difference. A simple trick is exposing yourself to sunlight first thing in the morning, as this helps regulate the biological clock and improve sleep quality. But beyond external changes, there's an even more powerful factor in transforming this reality: the way the person sees themselves. How a person sees themselves dictates the decisions they make. If someone believes they're stuck in obesity and depression, their mind will reinforce that idea, making any change much harder. The first step to breaking free from this cycle is changing the internal narrative. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who always fails or lacks discipline, it's essential to start viewing yourself as someone in the process of transformation. Small victories, like choosing a healthy meal or walking for a few minutes, should be celebrated as signs of progress. Another crucial point is avoiding self-sabotage. Often, people associate obesity and lack of motivation with their identity, as if they are permanent traits. But the brain is highly adaptable and can be reprogrammed with new habits and beliefs. A great exercise for this is replacing negative thoughts with constructive affirmations. For example, instead of thinking, "I can never stick to a routine," try saying, "I'm learning to create healthy habits, and every day I'm getting better at it." This may seem small, but it has a massive impact on how the brain processes challenges. Additionally, surrounding yourself with positive influences makes all the difference. The environment has a huge power over behavior, and consuming motivational content, being around people who encourage healthy changes, and even setting visible goals help maintain focus. Small daily rituals, like writing goals in a notebook or visualizing progress, help keep the mindset strong. But for all this transformation to materialize, it's essential to take the next step and act. After all, knowledge without action doesn't create change. Now that you understand how obesity and depression are intertwined and how small habits can make a big difference, the question is, will you let this cycle continue, or will you take the reins of your life? It's not easy, but every step taken in the right direction is a victory. If you apply what you've learned, you'll soon see changes not only in your body but also in your mind. The key is to take the first step, no matter how small. What will you do now to improve your tomorrow? If you identified with what was discussed here and want to learn more about transforming your life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep receiving content that will truly make a difference. Now it's up to you. Are you ready to change the course of your story? Comment below what your first action will be, share your journey with us, and let's walk this path together.